So personal statements, do you want to cover this?
Yeah. So with personal statements, it's kind of difficult to write about at the start. You end up writing way too much, and it's hard to figure out what you want to cut out. But one thing that I'd say is try not to sound, and it says there, keep it personal to you. It's true. You don't really want to sound too robotic. You want to make it personal because the people who are reading your applications are reading thousands of applications. So you want to just really sound interested in dentistry. You want to really showcase that passion that you do have. The general structure that we go through is the introduction. And so the way that I started was talking about personal experiences that I had, and how that led me to be interested in dentistry. And it's a good way to show that the reason why I say it's a good way to show your personal interest is because otherwise there's no way of the person reading your application to kind of gauge why you're interested in dentistry. People can ask why not medicine and things like that. In terms of work experience, that was the main bulk of my personal statement, but it's again very, very difficult to talk about in the current climate, but really honing in on every single kind of experience that you've had. So even this seminar, or virtual labs, because I know that Brighton and Sussex do, I'm not sure what it's called, but Brighton and Sussex are currently doing a virtual lab kind of feel where I think it's like you go around a GP virtually and you can kind of see what it's like, and that's very, very good. I know it's not directly dentistry related, but it's a very, very good way to understand what it's like to be in a team environment and a clinical environment. Extracurricular aspects to your application, such as jobs and voluntary work, really showcase that you care about people, and that's one thing that is really, really important in dentistry. It's very obvious, but things like voluntary work I did a lot of, and I'm sure that a lot of dental students now have done also. And it's just a good way to be able to interact with all sorts of people. With jobs, for example, I used to work in Next, and I used to work with kids and elderly patients as well, and that's really, really important for the clinical environment. So being able to showcase that you've had jobs or done voluntary work is a good way to show the person looking at your application that you are fit to do dentistry, and you can put yourself in an environment where you can communicate well to all sorts of people. And then in conclusion, you kind of a conclusion is, you're just rounding up whatever you're saying, and it should be really short and just get to the point, but you're really trying to finish it on a good note. Like I said, a lot of the people who are doing these applications read so much, and so the conclusion is kind of like the lasting impression. So you just want to have it punchy and just a really enjoyable read.
Just to add on to what Joanna has said, it's so true that people on the panel and people that are on the admissions team, they read thousands of applications every year, and the only couple of things that a person on the panel will take away is how you start and how you end, because the bulk of your personal statement is going to be very similar no matter how much you've done. It's going to follow this general structure of an introduction, a work experience section, extracurriculars, and then a conclusion. So how you start and how you end is very important. You want to treat it as if you think about the interview as well, like how you enter and how you exit is really important. In that same way, your personal statement should do the same thing. So make sure that the introduction is clear, it's concise, and it's showing the people on the application that you're interested in dentistry. And when you conclude that, you sort of reiterate that as well. Just to answer the question that was just popped into the chat, we can just...
I can't see the question, so you're going to have to read it out to me, Rayhan.
Yeah, no worries. So we've got another question saying, how would I differ and stand out compared to applications? In terms of personal statement, I'll answer it then, and then do not answer it generally.
We can both answer it, yeah.
Yeah, so in terms of personal statement, like Joanna said, if you've got any element of your application or life that is quite personal, so Joanna worked in Next, I took a year out and worked 1 year in retail, and they're not directly dental related, but it worked in my favor during my interview. I had a whole station in my MMI about my job during my gap year, which has nothing to do with dentistry, and I had no idea that I would be interviewed on that. But just because I added it in my personal statement, I had one sentence talking about my gap year and working in retail in Oxford Street. I had an entire 7-minute interview MMI station on that. And yeah, so I would just say, think about what you've done, dental related, science related, school related, but also think about things you're doing day to day. If you're working part-time, if you're part of a society, if you're passionate about something that's nothing to do with dentistry, talk about it, because they want to see the person behind the application more than an academic, because I think it's very clear that if you're interested in a degree like this, you're smart and you can get the grades and you can get the UCAT score. So what's beyond that? And whatever is beyond that is completely down to you. So make it as personal as you want it to be. And I guess that would definitely work in your favor.
Yeah, so the way that I introduced my personal statement was having a personal story about dentistry. And I know that it's very, very common, but things like jobs, there's a lot of, I feel like, college students who may or may not have jobs, and they may not feel like it's necessary to add into their personal statement. But like Rayhan has mentioned, it's very, very important to be able to give yourself or say these things in your application in order for you to stand out. And so things like working in retail is a very, very stressful environment, and you're working with new people constantly, and that's related very, very well in dentistry. And so that's why they kind of pick out these things where, even though they're not directly clinical, it's equally as important as having things like work experience. I'm not saying that you have to have a job now, but things like voluntary work are also a good indication of your passion for dentistry, and your ability to work in a team and a stressful environment.
And then we've got one more question. So how much technical knowledge do I need to know for my application? So should we answer that now? Because I think we've got a couple of slides that will cover technical, like jargon and things that you might need to know for dentistry. Just briefly to cover that, no one will expect you to know what dentistry is or what's going to be taught. Interviewers and people on the panel are very aware that you're a student and that you've come from sixth form. So they won't even test you on scientific knowledge. It's mainly about you and your personal statement and sort of why you want to study. When it does come to dentistry, you might have certain stations that will cover general things such as NHS and private, which we'll come on to later. But there are some sort of topics surrounding dentistry that you should read into. You don't necessarily need to know back to front, just have an appreciation for, I'd say.
Yeah, and just to add on, like in terms of technical stuff, I didn't know any clinical things before I came into university. I didn't know what material made what and why you would use this for this purpose and things like that. They're not expecting you to know that either. I feel like we all mentioned this later on in the seminar anyway, but it's not. They won't give you anything that isn't too technical in terms of like, what chemical is in this. I know you do chemistry, or how might this work with the tooth and things like that. It's very just general dentistry that they talk about and they expect you to know. But like I said, we'll mention that later on.